Should we count this down?
Yeah, sure.
All right. 3, 2, 1. And welcome to the Backseat playlist.
Thank you. I burned my throat on coffee. You're like, ready to count this down? I'm like, uh-huh.
Oh, yeah, I got this.
Oh, no.
And no, countdown 911, please.
911, yeah.
Here we are, episode 4. We're going to
Remember last episode when I said I like a vocalist to have a little bit of a raw throat feeling for intimate songs?
Yeah.
After that sip of coffee, I could write a heartfelt song.
Pro tip, producers out there, if your vocalist is not doing what you want them to do, burn their throat with some 340-degree coffee. But make sure you put it...
200-degree coffee.
Make sure you put it in the contract first. They can't sue you for that, though.
Sneak it in there, fine print.
Exactly. You don't want any of that McDonald's shit happening.
You should have scanned a PDF and made it negative so you can see that I used a just barely lighter white font to sneak that in.
It's invisible ink. The only way you can view it is to put urine.
It's like National Treasure.
Well, I think we always have an Office reference in every episode. We've got to.
Why not?
Why not? But here we are, the season Redux. Season 1 Redux, episode 4. We are working our way through our input list.
Sub-Series 3.
Dewey Decimal System Code 3. I don't even know how to do this. Is it point? Is it a dot? I don't know. I'll figure it out for next episode.
I feel like something has to do with like alphabetical of the author's name.
But isn't there like numbers? Isn't the decimals?
Yeah.
Dewey Decimal, it's a decimal and then...
But I know that the numbers before the decimal mean something as well.
We'll figure it out.
I think it divides it into fiction or nonfiction.
Ooh. What are we? Are we fiction or nonfiction? I am a fictional being. But
probably fiction. This audio advice podcast should be labeled under fiction.
So we can't be sued for lies.
Yeah.
But so last episode we talked about Snare, the bane of our existence.
Or the love of your life, depending on...
honestly, I feel like the love of your life is also the bane of your existence. Maybe that's just my view on relationships and it's not healthy, but...
That might not be the healthiest thing.
It might not be, but...
You should stop seeking out snare drum quality relationships. Pick an instrument that's never going to let you down.
You should pick something like TOMS. They're pretty damn easy.
Also, they're either... I don't know. They're similar to snares. There's not as much variance, but I feel that there's a very... narrow area of acceptance for toms. There's there's many narrow areas.
I feel like toms you kind of can get away with anything because unless you have if you're listening to any given record, how many songs on that record are heavily tom based? Maybe 1, maybe 2.
Yeah, I band dependent.
But I feel like the toms are the least hit drum.
Yeah.
And so I feel like you can kind of get away with maybe not the greatest of toms. And I also feel like when in doubt, either, depending if it's a rack tom, high pass the hell out of it or low pass the hell out of it. I'm not saying do this. This is not the greatest. But if you have no choice.
You can get away. There's more leeway.
I feel like toms have the most leeway out of all the drum kit.
I feel like there are there's narrow lanes to get it right. But there's a lot of narrow lanes to get it right. You know what I mean?
I feel like that's an oxymoron, but I like it though.
It's each, so I don't know how to there's not a lot of gray area between right and wrong. Mm-hmm. There's many narrow gray areas between what's right and wrong. And it's very, if you have a shit player, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I feel like that.
It's good to probably have the awareness of just a way to approach the drum kit and recording it and coaching people through playing it that you don't have to settle. Yeah. That's the whole point of the game is, we're not, the top dogs in the industry, but we're not just nobodies. Yeah. So I've totally lost my point with that. Yeah.
Let's start off.
I started thinking about Top Gun.
I feel like we can kind of skip over some of the stuff that we've done with the other drums because I feel like we've made it pretty damn clear that, if you want to know about wood, if you want to know about, I think we made this joke last episode, but if you want to know about sizes and wood sizes, refer to the kick and the snare. It's pretty much the same for toms,
Yeah.
You've got different woods, different materials.
I'll just sum it up.
Sum it up for us.
Less than a minute. Maple is
your analog summing or you digital summing? Bing. Got it.
The big plug-in company that shouldn't be named, their one summing plug-in that technically doesn't really add anything.
I know what you're talking about, and I don't like it.
Yeah. Maple, good middle of the road choice. Pretty, if you divide the frequency spectrum up into 3 bands, it's pretty even from lows, mids, and highs. Birch, a little bit more aggressive, maybe a little bit more bottom end. Mahogany, boost in the lows, really warm in the mids, pretty subdued highs. Oak is similar to birch, but slightly different. And then, you have your luxury woods like beech and babinga. And I've never played them, so my opinion on them isn't really worth a damn, because I don't know.
I like babinga. That's the Tama kit that we've got back at the house has got babinga wood, and it sounds nice. It's really punchy, but it's really warm. Punchy and warm. I like it. I
would say that from what I've heard players that play babinga, it gives you the attack of birch, but the low-end warmth of a mahogany.
Yeah, that's a great description.
They make metal drums. They make acrylic drums. Acrylic drums aren't really that warm. They're just kind of low-endy. They're very scooped sounding. Not a lot of mids, just kind of stick attack and some low-end rumble.
Drum heads. So important on everything in the kit, especially toms. We talked about with snare how important it is, but toms just as important.
Yep.
Getting the right tuning going. I think all the same points that we made with the snare on this one.
Yeah, you'll have to refer back to the kick episode, so I'll just obviously go listen to that too. But, your clear drum heads are going to give you a little bit more low-end body and a little bit more upper mid-range and high-end attack. Your coated drum heads are going to shave off some lows and shave off some highs, and there'll be a warmer, natural sound. You have single-ply heads, which will be more melodic, slightly easier to tune, but they will also be ringier, and they don't last as long because it's just one layer of film. And then you have your double-ply heads, which are 2 layers of film that not as singy, arguably slightly harder to tune because it's a thicker material that you have to balance all across the shell of the drum. Technology has gotten us to the point that I know Evans does for a fact, because they're the drumhead manufacturer, that I am pretty exclusively brand loyal to. There's not many things in the world that I'm just like, this singular brand does it the best.
Walmart.
Great value. They have a spicy maple bourbon pickle that I'm pretty brand loyal to.
Jeez,
it's good. That's not related to drums, just brand loyalty. But Evans makes a single-ply head that is the same thickness as a double-ply head. So they make 12 and 14 millimeter versions of a single-ply head, which is what is on my red kit right now. And I love them. They have the tunability and the melodic nature of a single-ply head, but they seem to be pretty damn near, tough and indestructible. I mean, I'm sure I could damage them if I tried, but they're awesome. The G12s and the G14s, check them out. That would be my recommendation if someone's like, I need tom drum heads. Mm-hmm. I'd be like, get the Evans G12s or G14s.
Yeah. Talking about tuning real quick, I find that I'm gonna say not even a hard and fast. I think a lot of stuff we talk about, it's always very my opinion will change depending on the scenario.
Yeah, but absolutely.
I've definitely gotten to a point where I get a pet peeve of mine is toms that are all tuned almost identically the same.
Yeah.
Because they're all, this happens a lot in the heavy rock and heavy metal scene because everybody's going for that punchy, cut through sound. Mm-hmm. But oh my God, I'm done with it. I can't. It really bothers me, and I've grown to just appreciate and love it. We talked going back to the beginning of the show, and we said toms is the least played instrument, but when they are played, though, I want to hear that that's a rack tom or that's the second rack tom.
They do serve a purpose, yes.
I want to hear that old, spoiler alert for the playlist. I'm not going to tell you which song, but Rush, man. He had God knows how many toms, but every single one of those toms sounded different.
Yeah.
That was like a musical, it was like a xylophone going down.
Yeah.
It was awesome. And not that you have to go to those extremes, but if you've got 2 rack toms, make sure they are clearly different pitches because you've got to think about the fact that they are sitting generally, your 2 rack toms are sitting right next to each other on a drum kit.
Yep.
And so if they are too close in pitch,
there will be a sympathetic ring. And I forgot to talk about this in the snare episode, but like a big thing with snare drums is reducing what I would call, and I stole this phrase from the drum tech Kenny Jarrett's. Again, I'm going to plug him in every drum related episode because he's just the man. He calls it sympathetic snare buzz, and that's when your rack tom is tuned too close to your snare or your kick drum. Every time you hit that, the snare buzzes on the bottom. And it's the same thing with a rack tom. Like if your toms are tuned to the same note, when one rings, the other's going to ring. Because drums, for the most part, in a rock setting, are really the only acoustic instrument on stage. So the vibrations of the stage itself cause the drums to perform different. I mean, yeah, you can play an acoustic guitar on stage, but if
you're generally running it through a PA then, and you're not really hearing but you're still hearing the acoustic drums themselves. Yeah, so I think that's my biggest point on this is just, even if you're going for that sound, even if you're going for that attack heavy, no body, you can still get that fundamental pitch that rings that happens as soon as the stick hits the head. Yeah. You can see it on a frequency spectrum analyzer. You can see that fundamental pitch, and then it might shift based on the ringing, but get that to be different so that you've got, the attack pitches are different, because it does. It drives me insane when every single tom sounds the same.
We'll dive into it with, tuning intervals and whatnot. But I think a way to negate that from happening, and it's a mistake that I see a lot of drummers do, is they'll start tuning their highest drums first, and they'll tune it too low. So then they keep trying to get everything to sound lower.
And you just get...
So they'll get their, their
that 10 hertz boost, baby.
They'll get their 10-inch tom sounding okay, and then their 12-inch tom won't be low enough. So then they'll tune that really low, and then they'll have a 14-inch tom.
No, I like that. I think that's a really... I've never thought about it that way. I think that's great.
Kick, snare, pretty important, but I will start with my lowest tom first, and I will tune that in key to the song with the lowest acceptable thing that the drum will give you.
I think that's actually really cool. I think, starting off with your kick drum and then going to floor tom. I think maybe snare being the last thing, I think could be... Yeah, maybe not, but...
I mean, I'll tune the snare roughly before I tune the drum kit, but in a recording session, I could have 3 to 6 snares available. So I've already accepted that the snares are going to need to be retuned at some point. So I will just get them close to sounding good, worry about the kit, and then I'll fine tune the snares after the fact. Because as we talked about in the snare episode, it's a big ocean in terms of what the snare needs to do in the mix. I think snares are nothing but gray area, with the exception of make sure the head's in good condition and make sure it's tuned. Everything else pretty much up for interpretation.
So you mentioned it in the last episode that we were going to get into this. I think this sounds like this is going to be a pretty deep discussion on this. But let's talk about, we don't need to cover the woods and detail and the heads and all that stuff. We've covered that. But you wanted to talk about intervals and specifically the tuning.
Yes,
with Tom. So let's talk about that.
I'll give you a brief synopsis, and as per usual, youtube.com/Kenny Sharretts. He will, there's 40 hours of Drum Nerd content on his YouTube channel. If you need precise specifics,
we're just giving an overview from an engineer's perspective.
So my kind of approach is, and I said it in the last episode, my natural ear isn't great at picking up pitch. So like when people are like, does this sound like the right key to you? That's not necessarily my turf. I know enough that I can say that's not in key. Yeah. So I will ask the artist or whomever like what the key of the song is. And I'll go in my, the wheel of fifths or the circle of fifths or fifths?
The wheel of fifths, I like that.
The wheel of fifths. I'll take an A flat, please. No, I'll ask what the key of the song is, and and then I'll pull out the circle of fifths, and I'll see what works, and I'll figure out what kind of, what needs to be where, and pick an appropriate interval. I mean, my hard and fast, like if I just had to set up a drum kit, and like if you hired me to be a drum tech for one of your recording sessions, and your artists are like, yeah, we don't know what the key is I'm going to figure out what note the kick drum likes to be tuned to, and then I'm going to base everything. I'm going to do a perfect fifth interval between my toms, in whatever key that is.
Yeah.
So then the drum set's at least in tune with itself. Might not be in key with the song, but
nobody's going to really notice that. You're not going to get that clashing thing.
At least your drums sound kind of glued together. Snare dependent.
Yeah.
So, yeah, usually if you can, try to tune your drums a fifth apart. I think it's far enough apart that
you're going to minimize that crossover.
Sympathetic, like buzzing.
Make it copacetic, bro.
Yeah. The tuning between the two heads is important. There's a lot of different intervals. You could have unison, which is where each head is tuned to the exact same pitch. It's cool for rock stuff, but I feel that it does get too much overtone because it just resonates.
The entire way through.
Yeah, if you tune both heads to the same frequency that the shell naturally resonates at, like it just goes. And I hate unnecessarily ringy drums. The snare, I understand it's musical. Toms, you do need some of the ring to cut through the mix, but there is a point where all it does is just create mud.
Yeah.
Especially on a stage. Because if you think about it, like, none of us are really in the high level of our music or audio careers where we're running a dedicated in-ear mix and we have a monitor guy in charge of what we're doing. So a lot of the time we're dealing with stage wedges where maybe, the tweeter's blown, so you're only getting, the woofer.
Yeah.
And if you have a fucking 16-inch floor tom that you hit and it sustains for 10 seconds and you're trying to hear a muddy woofer and the back end of a guitar cab, it's all in the same muddy frequency. So if you live, I know this is a recording thing, but live, if you kind of deaden that drum a little bit or tune it slightly differently, it suddenly makes more space on stage. So you can hear more of the body of the back of the guitar cab.
And I think that same principle goes for in the studio as well, too. I mean, because at least one of my approaches, coming from the more, I'll call it, heavily processed genres, I will get more of the body of my toms from my room and overheads because I don't want really any bleed in my direct mics because I'm going to compress them so hard. And so same thing is like if there's too much ringing, that's going to affect my processing in the room mics. If there's too much ringing in the toms, if they don't get out of the way quick enough, I'm really trying to get that snare too coming from the rooms, and so it's like everything needs to be a little bit shorter in that kind of more fast-paced processed music. It
doesn't need to be detuned and completely dead.
Yeah, no, it doesn't need to be dead. I want body, I want warmth, but not.
But yeah, the sustain needs to just be controlled. Like it needs to, and if the purpose of the song is a really long sustained tom thing, if that worked, like Long View by Green Day, probably not how I would tune a kit. But for that song, those really
it's cool,
soupy sounding toms, for lack of a better, where you hit it and it just kind of like you can just hear the drum head just kind of turning to mush, like that fucking works and it's cool. So there is a time and a place for that, but generally speaking, that's an outlier. Because I've heard drummers who really don't know this detail of tom tuning, and they know a little bit about audio or vice versa. And I was very passionately discussing tom tuning off mic, so I probably wasn't as polite and professional. But they're just like, well, yeah, but the sound guy's got a gate, so we can just gate it out. And I was like, well, that only affects the PA. Like your stage volume is like, because that floor tom will just get into everything. So if you just take 5 or 6 extra minutes, your sound guy will like you better. And we're gonna do a whole series down the road about why you think your sound guy hates you.
We've got a good guest for that.
We might have multiple good guests.
We got some good characters.
It's gonna be
But yeah, I think with Tom specifically, but with everything, it's like as a performer, do everything you can. Because basically, what you want your sound guy to do, whether he's your live sound guy or your studio engineer, is you want them to have to do the least amount of fixing and controlling.
Yeah.
You want to allow them to become the other member of the band to give you that creative spark, to give you that thing that makes your music just jump up one more step.
Yeah.
You don't want them to have to be bringing you from the negative to the positive. Like, you want to already be in the positive and make it even better. So everything you can do, don't think, oh, the sound guy can just fix it. No, because then he's going to have to use up more processing, using up more space in the stereo spectrum to fix these issues instead of creating something new and boosting what you've already got.
And most of our clients are definitely very budget conscious. And if we charge hourly, like, do you really want me eating up your budget fixing something that 2 turns of a drum key could have been fixed earlier?
Or then it not being fixed and having to not get as great of a mix as you might want, or I have to replace stuff,
Especially I do more live sound than I do client recording. I've said it in every podcast, and I just want to clear that up because we're doing a recording centralized podcast. But the same thing applies. If you saw your favorite band, right? Like the average listener, when they see their favorite band, what do they want to do? They want to be in the room and they want to sing along. Well, if as a front of house engineer, if the floor tom's fucked up and all it's doing is sustaining so that that note is going right back into the mic and back into the monitor and feedback's happening, well, isn't the fan going to be really mad that I didn't bump up the vocal in the chorus so they could hear it over the crowd when I'm sitting there fiddling with a gate on the floor tom? This stuff, it does matter. There's a lot of leeway and opinions to get it right. There's multiple, not to offend the animal lovers listening, but there's a lot of there's many ways to skin a cat.
Yeah.
So,
but there are definitely things that just cause issues, though. That no matter where you look at it, it's like, that could be creative, but in almost 80% of time, 80% of the time, there are issues that are just issues.
Yeah, if you're playing super fast punk rock music, where you're in the 160 to 210 BPM range, do you really want toms that ring for 10 seconds?
Yeah, it's just gonna be a mess.
Yeah, so deaden them up a little bit. We'll get to some hacks that can help.
Hack up your drums. Take an axe to them and quit.
Pick a real instrument.
Yeah, pick a real instrument, guys. Come on, something with strings on it.
Play piano instead. So I guess we'll kind of dive into more drum tunings. We took a tangent from unison tom tunings. As you can tell, I really don't tune them unison that much.
Yeah, no, I mean, to be honest, with all these, I don't tune to notes rarely often. But I will experiment. I'm going to experiment with it though. I just need to get a drum tuner.
Yeah, do that. I have the tune bot. You should get the drum dial, the one that's tension based.
Yeah.
The one hack
the old school one or the digital one?
I have the digital one. You should get the one the old school one.
The analog.
I just want to. I want to shoot them out.
Yeah,
and that would be fun.
And then literally shoot them.
Whichever one doesn't work the best, we will.
we will grab our rifles and
boom. I will say, if you haven't watched any of Kenny's videos yet, get 2 matching drum keys. So then you
match. Oh, I got you.
Yeah,
I think this is just an aesthetic thing. If you don't have 2 matching drum keys, you're gonna look like a real jackass to your clients.
Yeah, he does a thing called stereo tuning, where he'll tune the opposite lug on the drum at the same time.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense.
And 1, it saves time, but 2, you can feel the balance of the tension rods.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Because then even if if the drum set that you're tuning isn't capable of giving you the note that you desire, because let's face it, obviously the $3,000 Tama Babinga kit is going to be easy to tune. We should accept that as fact, right?
That's not my truth.
Okay. Well, I feel the shade that you threw there because I know what you're referencing. And I'm going to cry myself to sleep tonight. more than likely, the more expensive drum kits have a wider tuning range. Whereas, the clients that we're recording maybe have a $500 drum kit. And it's not that it's a bad drum kit. It's just that the tuning range is probably limited.
Yeah.
So, yes.
For you string players out there, it's the same thing as the tuners on your guitar. That higher-end guitars are going to have better tuners, so they're not going to slip. When you're tuning, you're going to get much more fine tuning. You're not going to turn that tuning key a bunch before you start to see the tuner react. It's the same.
But even if your tuning keys slip on a guitar, you can still intonate it properly.
Not necessarily.
Oh,
Not necessarily.
okay.
Depending on your guitar, you might not be able to intonate that thing properly. You might have a shitty bridge, shitty saddle,
Right.
the fretwork. So I think it is analogous to more expensive guitar you have. Well, not more expensive, but the better quality
Higher
you
quality,
have. You're going to have better intonation, better tuning, more consistent, easier time doing it.
So, the more... not beginner drum sets, but that entry level,
The consumer level kind of
prosumer, prosumer level drum kits.
I'm glad we both said that at the same time. That was great.
Right? We finish.
We're a prosumer podcast.
We finish each other's podcasts. Maybe you're in the key of A, and the kick drum just won't tune to A. Well, as long as the drum head is balanced with each other, like each individual lug on the tom or the kick drum, you'll have a better time with that drum than if things are out of whack. So that's the point of the stereo tuning, if you will.
Okay.
So I ever since he's shown me that way, first thing I did was I left the theater that night, and I think I was in the parking garage, and I just pulled up Sweetwater, and I was like, I need 2 matching drum keys, and I bought the same ones that Kenny uses.
Nice.
Because if he's gonna,
I definitely recommend. I'm not gonna blow Kenny anymore because I haven't watched any of his videos. But I will definitely say as a non-drummer, and I think this is important for any engineer, producer, whatever instrument you don't know, learn about it, be able to tune it. If you're a drummer and you can't tune a guitar, you can't. Now you don't need to be able to completely set one up. You don't need to become a guitar tech, but you should know how to restring a guitar. You should know how to restring a guitar, restring a bass, and get it tuned up. Of course, if there are a myriad of issues, of course, try to learn about them if you can. If you can learn how to intonate a guitar, which it's really not that hard. I'm not talking about making truss rod adjustments and other things like that, but learn your basics. Same thing. If you're a string player and you don't know drums, learn to tune them. Be able to do this stuff because a lot of the times, a lot of these musicians that come in,
it's a simple fix.
They don't know it. They themselves really don't know. They just tune it to, oh yeah, I think it sounds good, but what they think sounds good might not be what does sound good, or even what their goal is. They might give you a reference track and be like, man, I love the toms on this record. I really love that low sound. And they've got their toms tuned to be ringy and pitchy, but they're like, this sounds really good though, right? Like, yeah, but this doesn't sound anything like what you want. So having that ability to be able to get your clients gear, get your own gear. Even if you're renting stuff, because you can rent stuff to record. Just understanding it. You don't have to be able to play it, but just a basic understanding of how to get your different instruments, how to get your different gear to sound a certain way. Because a lot of the times you really can't change the fundamental tone
of the drum
of any instrument. Like we've said this before, but a Strat is going to sound like a Strat. A kick drum is going to sound like a kick drum. It's you're not going to be able to change that. So getting it right from the start. So learning how to do that stuff because most people aren't going to be able to do it themselves.
We'll kick it back to last episode. If you send me a bunch of references for songs for snare sounds that you like, and I'm like, this guy loves the Ludwig Black Beauty, and then you come in and I have a Ludwig Black Beauty set up, and you're just like, yeah, nah, I like shallow mahogany snare drums, and be like, oh.
Yeah, it's like, well, dude, you're not that recording. We're not going to get there. We're not going to get there. So
listening back to the snare thing, I said it in the last episode. Listening to toms, I realized that the way I mix toms is not how I like to hear them in other mixes. Like it's been very eye opening to just have a very narrow focus on one thing, but look at it from the big perspective and be like, oh, that's where I'm screwing up. Like my natural gut reaction to do something is not actually what I like to hear.
Oh, I completely understand that. That's a really hard habit to break. Just being I find that we joke about it, and it's gonna become a real thing. But the 10 hertz boost thing, when I'm mixing, I have this issue of cranking the low end. I love getting that sub going and just feeling it.
Feels good.
I love feeling it. And then I go and reference my mixes, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to blow up.
Yeah.
I'm going to destroy the suspension on my car because I'm blasting so much low
Mm-hmm.
end. And it's so weird. I get into a groove when I'm mixing, and I love that feeling, but then I go to listen to music that I actually really love, and it's not that much. It's just...
Yeah.
I think it's trying to compensate. I think it's me compensating. I think it's also just my love of music and just wanting to feel it. And you feel it in that low end.
I think people equate heaviness to low end,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not necessarily the case.
No.
Because like Meshuggah's heavy, and yes, they tune pretty low.
But there's not a lot of like bass frequencies in their music. It's not. It's not like an EDM mix or anything.
No, it's very like it just has a tight low mid, and everything's dialed correctly.
Yeah. So I think that's a really good point to make, that your natural tendencies to react and do something might not be what you actually like to hear. There is a difference between what you feel and what you hear, and I think that's a really key point to realize and figure out for yourself, is to take that time to realize I need to listen and not just feel. And I think also vice versa. If you're hearing a lot but you're not feeling it, I think that's...
You got to find the sweet spot,
Yeah, it's that ephemeral thing, like, well, what do you mean by feel? And it's just...
It's undefinable. It's like...
Yeah, it's ineffable. What do you mean I'm not effable? I said to every Tinder date. No.
It was like because you started talking about tom tunings.
Yeah. And I was like, what do you mean I'm ineffable?
My floor tom won't tune to F.
Yeah.
Can we try a different key?
It might not be effable, but it's D'able.
Hey.
We are not going to last very long on the
No, we've been...
We got kicked off of AM radio already.
Yeah.
Actually, we probably could easily get onto AM radio. We just buy a couple spots like Rush Limbaugh did. And then we become the feisty...
We're going to take down Big Plugin.
Yeah, we're going to take down Big Plugin, man. We're coming after you. Oh, just you wait. We've got some...
Big Plugin.
We got some cool series. We've got some characters. We need somebody to help us. Anybody out there that's listening, Patreon, non-Patreon, obviously not necessarily for these podcasts. We're not really worried about it. But we are going to be shooting some like we've talked about it, some tips and tricks, some creative videos. But we are going to be doing some like, can we call them sketches? Like
there's going to be a lot of infotainment, which is what I would consider this.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, we rebooted this company because we both just wanted to be creative. So there's going to be some content posted that is literally just for us to make ourselves laugh.
Yeah, and we hope you guys like it, because I think for us, like,
it's about having fun.
We were discussing this actually before the show. That we're starting off with this podcast we're going down the input list. We're talking about a lot of audio nerdy stuff, and because I think that's a good basis where we want to start off with. But we do want this podcast to bloom into like. Obviously, the main focal point, not the focal point, but the
connection.
The connection point will be the playlist. We will always have a playlist of the episode of the week. But music's going to be the thing that connects us, because we've got some guests that we're planning on having on that are chefs. We've got some non-engineer, non-audio guests that are going to come on, but they have a tie into our music world, and that's
Yes, it is not Reflections Audio Collective. It is Artists Collective.
Yeah.
We're just starting with this heavily nerd talk. Because
it's a good foundation to get to know about us, get a vibe of what we know, what we want to share.
Easy for Phoenix and I to do this because it's something we're borderline experts in.
I don't like the word expert. We're professionals. We are professionals. We do make money doing this.
Expert's the wrong word, because I feel like the more I learn...
We're knowledgeable.
Yeah.
We are experienced.
We have enough that we're not the top dogs, but we can hold down jobs when
and we can relate, I
services
think,
are required.
to a lot of the things that everybody else is going through with in terms of their artist career, about trying to make it. We're in the process of trying to make it, whatever that means,
Yeah.
But
if you like music and brew beer, there's a spot at the table or the couch for you.
If you like music, we have a spot for you, basically. You could be an oil rigger, whatever. If you want to come on and talk about music with us, that's what we want. That's basically it. So it doesn't really matter. You don't have to be an audio engineer. You don't have to be a musician. But as long as music is a focal point in your life, that's basically what this podcast is. We're just starting off with the audio engineering stuff because
it's what we know.
We love it. And it's a good foundation for you guys to learn about us, for those that don't know everything about us.
Let's get to more tom intervals.
More tomfoolery.
Oh, I never got to tell you what I wanted to tell you.
I've been holding that one in for a while.
Oh, that was good. On my console, right? Mainly for live, because I do this in Pro Tools now too. Is if I have to record 3 toms, you usually have like what, tom 1, tom 2, or floor tom. Mm-hmm. I have Thomas, floor tom.
I hate that so much.
Right?
It should have been Tom. What'd you say? Tom, Thomas, and then Tommy.
Oh, damn it. No, Tommy should be the smallest one. So Tommy should be like the 10-inch tom.
Okay.
Tom should be the 12-inch, like the dad. And then Thomas should be the floor tom, which is the grandpa.
I dig it.
That's way better.
Yeah.
Shit.
We really wanted to get just a random guy named Tom to be on this episode.
We tried.
We were just going to bring him in for like 5 minutes, like, hey, everybody, this is Tom.
We are talking Tom
We were talking Toms today. And then we literally would kick him out right after, like,
yep.
You have to leave, right?
Yep.
That would have been great. But we're not quite there yet, but we will get there. We will do a Tom Redux episode, maybe season 5, a couple years from now, and we'll do that. You'll all have forgotten about that joke by then, and we'll bring it back. We'll have somebody named Tom. We'll have the budget to pay somebody.
Yeah.
It's super meta. I dig it.
All right. Another common tom tuning interval is the perfect fourth.
I love perfect fourths.
You tune the batter head to the tonic, and you tune the resonant head a fourth above. That is... It'll give you the same projection and body as the unison, but because the pitches of the 2 heads are different, you won't get that like standing wave kind of deal where it's just ringing for days. So I recommend that for more modern styles of music. Your rocks, your metals, your power country ballads.
What type of rocks though?
Oh,
Quartz? Hematite?
Just driveway gravel.
It's my favorite genre of music.
Yeah.
You like rock music? Dude, I love driveway gravel.
Yeah, I mean, let me tell you. You have a major third where you batter head is the tonic. Tune the bottom head a major third above that. Sounds a little vintagey, maybe a little jazzy. I don't use that one too much.
So did guys like John Bonham and... Yeah. I just blanked on it.
We'll get to Bonham in a second here.
Yeah, I just did a lot of those early rock and roll guys, did they tune their toms to notes, or did they? I mean, because when I listen to it, it definitely doesn't sound like it. But I don't have perfect pitch.
It could be biased just because of the recording techniques that they had. Because like Bonham was playing into like 4 mics for most of the time. Mm-hmm. So after the major third, you have the minor third, which is same deal: batter head, tonic, resonant head. A minor third above that. That's really good for like jazzy kind of stuff.
Okay.
It's a little bit more of like a saggy note, because it is a minor rather than a major. So it doesn't sound as sing-songy. It's a kind of a acquired drum taste. It would be good for a more like somber vibe for whatever reason.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's minor. That would make sense.
And then you have inverted tunings,
Ooh.
Which is how we tie into Bonham or Stuart Copeland. Mm-hmm. And the man, the myth, the legend, Danny Carey does this sometime. That is where the resonant head is at the tonic and the batter head is tuned higher, which is a tuning that I like to mess around with. It doesn't work for everything, but there is something about it.
There is just something about.
Well, it's nice because you get the high pitched attack from the stick hit on the batter head, but then it's sustaining at the tonic rather than tuning it to the note and having the harmonic be higher. Mm-hmm. I don't know, like it doesn't always work, but when it does, it's just
really cool.
Yeah, Bonham for the most part tuned his kit like that.
Okay,
but that's also because he was playing like a 14-inch rack tom and 16 and 18-inch floor toms, where they're so big that if you, if you tune an 18-inch floor tom as low as it'll go, it's...
Oh, that's deep.
There's no bounce back from it. Like,
you're going to need my one band graphic EQ.
You're hitting basically a couch pillow or a couch cushion at that point. Like, you're getting nothing.
We should...
So if you flip the tuning and you tune the batter head a little bit higher and then the resonant head to the low, low note,
you know now that we need to create a Backseat playlist sample collection, and one of them is going to literally be a throw pillow that we recorded and compressed the living hell of. And
Yeah, why
then
not?
we used which we were gonna make this. We are gonna raise the money for me to make a one band graphic EQ at 10 hertz. And
we're gonna
run our sampled collection through that, and it'll be the throw pillow.
Patreon.com/Reflections Artist Collective if you want to get on that train.
Please.
Side note, the Backseat playlist is brought to you by Reflections Artist
Yeah,
Collective. We're bad at housekeeping. Shout out to ourselves.
Reflection. Yeah, Reflections Artist Collective. That is where you're going to find all of these future projects
It's
on
our
our
umbrella
YouTube channel,
corp.
the Patreon. It's our network. It is
Yeah.
our network, our umbrella corporation. But
Yeah, podcast is just Backseat playlist because we're talking tunes and what we like about it.
tunage. We are tunage.
So yeah, that's the general gist of Tom tunings. Again, you know who to check out on YouTube if you need specifics.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. I really don't have a lot to say about toms. I mean, because we've covered a lot. I mean, we're kind of getting to that point now with the drums where toms is the last thing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, until then we get to the point where it's not drums anymore; it's cymbals.
Yeah.
Which we'll get to that one. But so I guess let's break into microphones here. Let's break into mics on the toms. Unless you've got another point, you got something else in your show notes?
We'll do dampening as well since we're still at the drum. It's the same as the snare, your moon gels to control some of your overtones. Gaff tape tents I really like. Fold up a bandana and binder clip it to the drum rims. You could buy those overtone rings that Remo makes. I think they're called
I dig those. Those are nice.
Yeah. I mean, you could even
Nuva rings,
Yeah. You could cut out an old drum head to fit, if you need it on the cheap. Kenny has a video on it, but a way to kind of naturally gate out some of that resonant sustain in drums is to bunch a bunch of cotton balls together and kind of spread them out so it's thin, and you put that in the drum.
Okay.
So it's real thin and pillowy, I guess, would be. So then the idea behind that is you hit the batter head, the sound wave goes down the drum, and it lifts the cotton balls up ever so slightly, and then it falls back down and just naturally gates the sustain.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's wild. I'd like to see some high-speed footage of that.
Some slow-mo.
Yeah, some slow-mo.
I mean, it's not like a huge jump, but just
but enough that it.
Yeah. I mean, I've done things where I've been mixing live at bars, and the house kit just was tuned for sustain, and the drum heads are old, so you can't really get it in tune, but it's just going. And I went behind the bar, and I got a cocktail napkin, and I ripped it in half, and I just kind of put all four, I unfolded it, and I ripped it into 4 spots, and I just threw that in a drum. And
yeah. Yo, I want to do an experiment where we put loose change in a drum.
Yeah.
See what happens there. I think that would be kind of fun.
I've heard of people that put a penny or a dime in the snare drum.
Yeah.
Just one
I think
or two.
It'd be kind of cool to try it, see what it sounds like.
Yeah.
Kind of fun.
I'm open to all of it. But that's just kind of, really anything to just kind of, and sometimes you just you don't necessarily put it onto the dampening's not a fix. It's just a
control measure.
Yeah.
Because I think,
and sometimes it's nice to just add that thickness to the drum too.
Yeah. Because I feel like we've kind of already said this, but to reiterate the point, unlike the snare where I said I like a lot of ringiness these days because it helps. I think in toms it's the opposite. You still want sustain, but there's a ringing that you don't want. That overtone ringing that we're talking about that gets in the way of other things. It's
because a lot of the times it's not defined to a note.
Yeah, because you don't want to kill your tom. You don't want it to just be a transient
thunk.
Yeah. I mean that could be cool, and depending if you've got a tom,
if you're going for the fat drum, dead drums.
But it's just ways to get those overtone ringings to just be a little more subdued. Not kill them. You don't want to kill any of that stuff, but to subdue them.
Yeah, because it does add weight to the drum. If you'll miss it if it's not there. But
I feel like toms just can get out of anything on the drum kit. Toms can get out of control really easily if they're not taken care of properly.
An hour of YouTube research on how to properly, and again, trust who's telling you how to tune toms. But a little bit of research and a little bit of knowledge of these workarounds does go a long way.
Yeah.
So, that's about what I have for the actual drums themselves. So yeah, let's dive into my addiction now, which is microphones.
I mean, you've got. I feel like we don't need to touch on this a lot. Classic 421.
Probably my favorite tom mic.
It does. It shapes the toms, and I feel like it really catches all the good stuff. It is a sound though. It is a sound, and it's gonna do that same sound every time. I feel like, unlike the way we talked about the 57 on the snare, where the 57 on the snare gives
shapeable.
Exactly shapeable. I feel like the 421 on the tom, you can hear it on a record no matter what you do to it, no matter how you compress it or EQ it. You can go, that's a 421.
If you have Owen Wilson or like dive bomb toms, as I think, where it goes, ooh, I don't like a 421 on that style of tom because that kind of presence bump in the 421 just accentuates that, like, ooh.
Ow.
The real 80s. Like,
Yep.
I call them dive bomb toms.
Yeah, dive bomb tom. Sounds like a wrestler.
That'd be a good wrestler.
Oh, we got a character now for one of
dive
our
bomb tom.
We got one of them.
Yep. Yeah. But when the drum's tuned right, the thing I like about the 421, and this will be very apparent in my playlist, is that like when you mic it, when you tune the drum right and capture it with a 421, they're present, but they also just stay out of the way. Mm-hmm. Like you feel them more than you hear them.
Yeah.
Which is what I kind of like in toms. I used to think I just wanted like, because I would watch all the like here's how to mix metal and here's how your toms sound like cannon blasts, and it's not appropriate for 80% of the genres out there.
Funny, I have grown to like, I really like hearing my toms. I like feeling them, but I really like hearing because I feel like I've gotten to that point where I don't hate it, but I dislike when all you can is feel it, because I do want to hear that drum. I want to hear the different characteristics of the toms.
And that was probably the wrong choice of words. Like, I want to hear it as well, but it doesn't need to be as apparent in the mix as it should be. You know, like,
no, I know what you mean.
My
it doesn't
toms
need to be
would
ripping your
hit,
face
and
off.
it would...
Yeah, and it would be like, oh, whoa. Yeah, no, I know what you mean.
But I think that's because I'm a drummer, so I'm used to hearing the drums very close. Mm-hmm. And I have a very controversial opinion when we get to the next episode.
Cool.
So
I've got... I think they are pretty much they're the Shure version of your Sennheiser E604s there, but my little clip-on Shure tom mics, I can't remember what the model is.
56s or whatever.
I want to say it's like 3 numbers. The PGA somethings, I think.
Yeah, they're
like
a bent 57.
Basically, yeah. I love those. Those are great. They're not. They do the same thing. I mean, I feel like it's everything. It's the thing that all Shure stuff does, is that it's like it gives you a good flat, for the most part, just flat, but kind of cardboardy kind of sound.
There's a lot of like
you said, you said the word boring, and I think that is really true. That it's like, but I'll say it in a non-negative way. Like, yeah, it might be boring, but it gives you a platform to really build from. Whereas if you're going for character, I don't necessarily like them. But I think for a lot of the stuff that I've been doing lately, especially considering I don't have a lot of the source tones that I'm getting, might not be the greatest due to budget constraints or whatever it might be. And so, the Shure stuff that I've been rocking, those little clip-ons, give me a really just nice flat bass to work from.
I might have
BASE, not BASS.
I might have said boring. I think I just said I'm bored with them.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those where like I use them so much live that when I'm recording, I just want something different. Mm-hmm. Like I just want to mix it up. But it's actually kind of weird because if you listen to the snare episode, you'd be like, Adam hates the 57. And when we get to the guitar episode, you're going to be like, Adam hates the 57. But if I'm doing...
I love the 57 on guitar.
If I'm doing coated heads and kind of like a very natural, unprocessed drum sound, I love 57s on toms.
I haven't done 57s on toms since like one of my first ever recordings.
Yeah.
I think just because I've had other stuff that are more considered tom mics.
Yeah. I mean, maybe on a 16-inch floor tom, it's not the vibe, but if like, if I were playing a 4-piece kit for like Nick's album and I just needed a very unprocessed drum, like just these are what drums sound like in the room, I'm more than likely going to put a 57 on the rack tom. And I'd probably play my cocktail kit, so I'd put a 57 on a 12-inch rack tom and a 14-inch floor tom.
I don't own any, but I've gotten to use them. I forget what all the numbers are on them, but the like the Audix drum pack that they have.
The D2s and the D4s.
I like those.
Yeah.
I really do like those. I really like Audix on all drums for the most part. I think they're really great. I'm not a fan of the D6 on any tom. Actually, I've tried it, and it just I said it in the previous episode. Love it on the kick, love it on the snare, but it just doesn't do for me a whole lot.
Yeah, I like it on toms live through a PA.
Okay.
I almost feel like this is just my ear and my approach, but again, the stuff I mix and record on is kind of different than what I do. Like a lot of the stuff I like to mix live.
Yeah.
I like Audix drum like mics live. Like if I had to use one brand on the drum kit across,
for sure.
like.
And I mean, if I had to in the studio, like if I only had an Audix drum pack, I'd be happy. It's just I wouldn't use the D6 on the toms; I would use that on the kick. But
I like it on the floor, like a 16. I don't know.
We've got the one here. I've got the 112. I like the 112
on a floor tom too.
I like that on the kick as well, but I like that on the floor tom.
I like the 604. You know, a lot of people you'll read. I think it's I guess it's Gear Space now.
Oh yeah, they changed it.
R.I.P. To
I
the
like
OG.
the old name.
I know, because it was always fun because you'd have a window open on the internet, and then like your girlfriend at the time would be like, "What's Gear Sluts?"
Yeah.
I don't know
and
why.
they used a Z, so it made it okay.
I'm buying gear all the time.
Yeah,
I'm a microphone whore.
Yeah.
Like, put that on a shirt, sell it. I don't care.
I'm a microphone whore. What do we got? We've got the SC. We all guys referenced them. The X1D. You brought that to the table.
Yeah, it's a condenser mic designed for kick drums.
Okay.
But it's pretty full frequency and response, like 20 to 20. Sounds good on a floor tom or a rack tom. If I'm putting a D6 on a floor tom and I need like an aggressive drum sound, I'll probably put the X1 on the rack tom.
Yeah.
You know, I've used it less since I got the 421. I don't know why it fell out of my rotation. Like, it's
I definitely like. I really do like large diaphragm condensers on toms if I've got a not a super dense arrangement. Because I feel like because the large diaphragm condenser, it brings a little more detail to it that I feel like it does also then pick up a little bit more of everything else because it's a large diaphragm condenser. I feel like,
if I'm not going for a super separated drum mix.
If I'm going to be blending everything together, I do really like that because it does bring out a lot of fun character in the toms that you don't get from a dynamic.
Yeah.
But you know, if you're mixing something that's going to be super dense, where you're going to have your stereo left and right guitars that are just ripping your face off, and you're going to have heavy bass, then I'm not gonna bother with the condenser. It's just gonna add too much info that I don't need. That's gonna probably end up getting in the way.
Yeah, you need like the super cardioid D2s that are just gonna pick up the hit. We got sidetracked with R.I.P. Gear Sluts. Some of the forums will say that like you shouldn't use a clip-on mic when you record because it'll be like there'll be the super low end thing that's picked up from the drum.
I've never had any issues.
I
don't even know what. You shouldn't use a clip-on mic? I've never heard that, actually. I've never heard that. That sounds like something that...
Go to Ash Soane's studio in England. He's a phenomenal drummer. His recording studio is in the base of an old windmill.
Ooh.
Follow him on the gram. He posts groovy shuffles to trip-hop lo-fi beats all the time. Dude's putting 604s on all of his toms.
Dude, my favorite drum mics I've ever heard, I don't own a pair, but I will own a pair one day, is that custom set of Telefunkins that Paul had.
The M81s, yeah.
He had the nice brown finish. Those were clip-ons. Dude, those... Now, granted, I might just be looking back in my memories and fantasizing about them because they were like the first pair of like really nice mics that I really ever got to experience and use. But I do remember those... and it was not the greatest drum kits that we used. It was the studio's just kind of teaching kit. Yeah, they were both Intama Imperial Stars. Those mics to me, those were really nice sounding.
Yeah,
I love the Telefunken stuff. Yeah. That would be my choice. If I could have the Telefunken kit, that would be. Oof.
Yeah, there's like three. I love the 604. You can't turn your nose up at it. Like it's just
I love it. It's great.
I've heard rumors that it's basically the 421, but without the
shitty mic clip.
Yeah, without all of the extra wiring and components for the like the roll off switch. It's kind of just set
Oh, really?
So I would like to test the frequency.
Yeah,
response.
I would love to test that. Just like
I haven't confirmed it, but I don't not believe it. Because in live, if I have bad tuned drum kits and I put a 604 on it, you know what it emphasizes? The ooh.
That's
So,
really cool. We should totally test that. I would like to know that. Because is the 604 cheaper than the 421?
Yeah. I think you get a 421 for like...
They're like $400.
They're $399, or I think that you can find them on sale for like $299. You can get, I think 604s are like 120 each.
Yeah. And they're clip-on.
They come undone from the clip, too.
They don't have that shitty clip.
Yeah, they have a great clip, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice.
Unthread it, put it on a mic stand.
Nice.
So, yeah, well, that'll definitely be a test.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I don't have it. If I were to buy a drum mic kit, the 3 that I would buy would be the Telefunken one, because I do like Telefunken. No surprise, the SE Electronics V kit.
Yeah.
Or I would get Hi-O PR31s, which is, we talked about it, I think, on the first episode. It is the capsule of the PR30/PR35, just in a drum...
In like a drum case.
A drum mic sized.
I want to ask you a question. So I know that I probably know your answer. This is more just me wanting to talk.
That's fair. This is a podcast. It's useful.
We didn't really talk about it with kick and snare because it's pretty much a given that in most modern music, we'll call it most radio music, that encompasses again, we'll say this again, but pop music, hip hop, rock, metal, any of what we'll call your modern radio music, because most people aren't listening to like jazz or other stuff like that. That's few and far between on the radio. What I'll call your main radio stations. But most of that, there's a kick sample, there's a snare sample to some degree.
Yeah.
I really never sample toms. I really never add a tom sample. I mean, unless for whatever reason, due to budget or the client, and I'm just like, whatever, we're gonna use their toms, and they are like dog shit.
Yeah.
I feel like I can make them work. I feel like I can just either scoop the mids. I can do something. I feel like I rarely use tom samples unless I'm going for a specific tom sound that I just cannot get. Yeah. Because, it's like, damn, I really want this deep tom, and we just don't have a really big floor tom, and they're like, I really want that low thing. Then we'll sample whatever floor tom we need.
Yeah, I try not to. I mean, I've gotten a few projects where the drums have just been fucked. Like, I did one project that I never got paid for, so it's never been released. It's just sitting on it's on my archive hard drive.
Ooh, you'll have to tell me about that after the show.
We listened to the EP in your car on the way to a gig once, so you've heard it.
I think I know.
It was a punk band kind of thing, probably going back 4 years at this point. 3 years, 4 years?
Oh, man, that was a while ago. Okay.
Yeah. But like the whole drum kit was tracked out of phase, and they did everything live. So there's like really bad guitar bleed, and
we'll do it live.
And these drum mics that weren't even like, they didn't even like sound like it was rough. So I if a drum kit is just beyond repair, like totaled, if you will, I will put tom samples on. But I mean, again, the way I kind of dig toms is I've been on a kick where I kind of bury them in the mix a little bit, where they're not the most prevalent thing, because a lot of times the styles of music we're recording aren't exactly driven by the toms, so they need to be there because they're played.
Yeah, I don't like pokey toms. I don't like toms that poke out. Like I want, everything I want to be audible. I want you to be able to hear it, but I don't want it to poke out or smack you in the face.
You can tuck them down maybe 2 dB quieter than you want, and just let some other stuff just kind of mask the garbagey areas of it just a little bit. I mean, and that's after a lot of processing to get them just to be usable. But yeah, for the most part, I'm not really sampling toms.
Yeah, because again, unless you've got one of those songs where it is a heavily tom-based song.
Yeah.
Like you said, like that Green Day song where it's like, oh man, the entire beat is toms.
Or Tool.
Or Tool. Then it's kind of like you can get away with a lot more with them. Whereas, your snare and your kick those are your focal points of most modern music is like that kick and that snare. So like if they sound like shit, they
Well,
sound
that's
like
like
shit.
making the playlist. Is like all the toms I dig are just like well placed in the mix. So it'd just be like, yeah, here's a 6-minute song where the toms are hit 4 times.
Yeah,
so I
to be
tried
honest,
to pick.
I had a really hard time kind of coming up. Not a really hard time, but I don't know. I feel like really good toms you just don't notice. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's more so, and it's not that you
They're-
don't notice them, but they come in and they do their job and then they get out of the way.
Yeah, it's you have to have a very sophisticated ear palette to notice the subtle differences of toms.
Yeah, I feel like the only time it's a bad tom is if you go like, you know,
yeah.
whereas like a snare drum is a lot more. I don't know. I don't really know what I'm trying to say.
I
Toms
know
are
what
weird.
you're saying.
Toms
yeah,
are just so
they're
weird.
a strange instrument where.
Yeah. It's very rare that people are just like, damn, man, I love the toms on this record. You know, people are going to say snare, kick, the guitars. It's very rare that someone gets very specific about the toms.
Yeah, and I think it's because even though I mentioned, 5 different ways you can tune your toms, once they're in tune and they're working, they're still going to be mixed and placed in the mix the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, depending on the tuning of your snare alters where it is in the mix.
Yeah, no, completely.
So, like, yeah, maybe the toms. And I think it's because, you know, most drummers are playing 2 to 5 of them.
Mhm.
Like, there's such a wide variety of that instrument, but they're still processed to be glued to each other. So they don't ever really stand out because they're meant to just sound like different pitches of the same thing.
Yeah, no, completely.
So, like, it's weird. Like, toms are strange because on the surface, it just looks like you put the mic on it, you aim it at the center, and that's what it is. But then it's like toms, there's so much little detail that adds up
Yeah.
just to get to what people think is the broad picture. Whereas,
Yeah.
like, an untrained ear can tell you the difference if you just tell, like, whoever it is that doesn't know anything about engineering or music, if you just say, pick 5 random songs, listen to just the snare drum, listen to them as many times as you want, but just listen to the same 5 songs all day, and just write down how you feel about the snare drum. Is they will tell you different characteristics that basically line up with it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you say, now listen to the toms, they're going to be like, they all sounded the same.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that goes to kind of my playlist a little bit. That the reason I chose them is because it is. I think I picked a lot of songs where, not a lot, I think a good amount of them. Some of my favorites on here are songs where the toms are all very clearly different, and that they're all very much not a focal instrument to the songs, but
They're an accent instrument that needs to be well done.
yeah, they're not just an attack based thing. There is character to it.
Yeah.
Did we want to move on to that?
Do we have? Let me check my show notes real quick. You know,
check in the notes. See, we got to get those iPads. Please check us out at patreon.com/reflectionsartistcollective.
Good plug.
Every donation that you make is going to go not to our own pockets, and it's not going to go to Sarah McLaughlin. It is going to go to getting us some gear to make the show better for you guys, so it's a little more fluid. We can do more stuff. We can get out the basement. You don't have to hear the dogs.
Yeah.
You know?
Or unless you want to hear.
Unless
the
you want to
dogs.
hear the dogs, we will bring the dogs on air if you want. We will sit them down.
Yeah, I mean, other things. There's a Sylvia Massey, who's one of my favorite engineers and producers. She has a thing where she will point the tom mics in the same direction on the drum kit.
Mm-hmm.
So
We've talked about that.
If you're sitting at the drum kit, you know, your rack tom might be at your 12 o'clock position, pointing to the center of the clock if you, the player, are at the center of the clock. And then your floor tom will be at the 3 o'clock position, also pointing at the center of the clock, where if they're both pointed, you know, the same way, she says that gives you a better relative and more phase accurate version of the drum kit.
Ever since you showed me that when we did a drum recording together, I've always just done it that way. I've always made sure I'm pointing the same way, and I never have any phase issues with my toms and my kit. I try to keep all the mics, even the snare mic, as much as I can, because the snare mic, you've got to position it in a way to block out hi-hat bleed. Yeah. But with the toms, at least, I follow that to a T.
And the biggest problem that I think we come in conflict with as far as like unnecessary stuff getting in toms is cymbal bleed. For the most part, in a modern recording sense, you're gonna trim all that out anyway.
Yeah.
Like,
My favorite thing for toms these days is the slate drum gate. That thing is mind blowing. It's a little hit or miss on snare and kick drum, also depending on the player. But I feel like I have used it on toms with a wide variety of drummers recently that all hit very differently, and it gets rid of that bleed so well on toms for some reason. If you've got it works really great on snare if you've got a consistent snare hitter, because then it reads that information really well. Same thing with the kick.
Yeah.
But the toms, it is so forgiving with toms, and it is, you don't have to fucking spend, because a lot of us will end up just, gates are not always the most consistent thing, and so a lot of times it can just be easier just to say screw it, I'm gonna just
take the 20 minutes.
Take the 20 minutes to manually edit, but I don't do that anymore with the slate drum gate.
Nice.
It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I use expanders more than gates these days. I mean, really, the biggest problem with bleed is you're just going to have to ask the drummer to raise the cymbals if they're too close.
Yeah.
I can...
Andy?
Looking at you, Andy,
love you, buddy.
You rip. I can't knock you because your playing's better than mine. But, like, if you have a drummer come in and their ride is, like, 2 fingers above the floor tom, like, you're going to have to be like, bro. Like,
you might not even be able to get a mic under there.
Yeah, like, you're going to have to move this. And I probably go to an extreme where my cymbals are pretty high up and I just angle them down. But I like to have 6 inches to a foot of space between a cymbal and the top of a drum. So, yeah, I mean, really just cymbal placement, but we'll talk about that next episode.
The next episode.
And it's not as important with the snare because the toms, for the most part, in your average song, aren't the most played thing in the song. Like,
most of the time they aren't.
The snare needs to be crisp and clear or placed in the mix to perfection because it is driving the groove of the song. Where
backbone.
Most songs with the types of musicians we're recording, the toms are just the accent parts. So you can...
They're used for fills.
Yeah, it's not that they're not important, but they are easier to clean up.
They're more forgiving.
Yeah. Unless they're just beating crashes and like barely hitting toms. And then, but then there's a lot more workarounds with toms than there are snares after you get the tom in tune and at least sounding well. Like, that's a given, is that all of the front end work has to be done before you even put a mic on it. And there's just a lot of details that drummers miss with toms and just these little things, put some cotton balls in there, making sure the tension's even around the drum heads and you're relatively in pitch, and just making sure your toms are tuned far enough apart, like we said at the top of the show. Like, that's pretty much your drum care. Like, the angle of the tom doesn't really impact that much.
Yeah, I really... unless you're doing something extreme.
I mean, it does, but it only matters if it's angled in a way that is, like, making your playing suffer from it. Like,
exactly.
But, yeah. It doesn't matter necessarily, like, where they're placed above the kick drum and whatnot. Like, some people would argue... It makes a difference, technically, but I feel like it's such a small difference.
It's so minuscule that it's kind of like... Yeah, it's
not going to impact
it as
much.
There's so many other things that you should use your budgeted time with other than the angle of the toms. Again, unless it's an extreme case where it's like, dude, you're
inhibiting the player from actually playing. Whereas if if they're...
Or for some reason you literally can't get a microphone in because of the way they have an angle.
Some drummers like to have them like so 80s inverted and flat that they have to like turn their wrists up to play, and their drum fills are bad and you can't mic them properly. You're basically just like...
pointing it at the floor.
You're pointing it at the edge of the cymbals, just hoping to catch. Like, have them, somewhere between flat and a negative 45 degree angle, depending on how you play and how it's set up. Yeah. But just control that sustain a little bit. And, tune them so they're not just ringing for days. And your tom recordings will get a little better.
What kind of processing do I like on toms? I think you used the word effect, and it made me think. I have done some when I have some cool like pan tom fills, adding like a phaser on them or something like that. Yeah. That's always really cool. I think my general processing with toms is the slate drum gate is my main thing these days. Or I might have just cut everything out. Just a little bit of compression. Depending on the genre of music, more or less, depending on what kind of sound I'm going for, I will use compression for that tonal change that it gives. And so sometimes I might, really go hard on it and then parallel compress.
Yeah, it's so genre dependent.
Yeah, but in general, slow attack, fast release.
Yep.
If I am doing like a heavy, dense mix, I will definitely boost a lot in around the 8 to 10K range to get a little more of that, if you will, click out of the toms,
Stick attack.
and then the low fundamental. And that's why I think it's so important to have different pitches for each one of your toms, because if they're too close together, then when you go to boost the fundamental, you're boosting the same frequencies, and then you get a build up, and it's a mess. And I think it's also important to, again, making sure that your floor tom is not too close to your kick drum in terms of frequency range, because then, again, if your kick drum's at 60 hertz and your floor tom's at 65 or 70, like, you're not going to get as low of a floor. You're not going to get that same emphasis from your floor tom when it gets hit, because it's getting muddied by the kick and vice versa.
Yeah, generally speaking, I like the fundamentals of my floor tom to be somewhere in the 90 and above range, because it's low.
It's low, but it's not. I don't want to getting in too far of that sub
subby,
range, because that's where my bass and my kick are generally going to sit.
Yeah, and usually your floor toms are panned left or right depending on drummer or audience perspective. And a lot of the times when I process, I'm doing some mid side where I'm taking a lot of the low end out of the sides, because it just
blurs your image. I find with a lot of the music that I mix currently, I cut a lot of the mids out of the toms. Scoop the mids. There's just not a lot of information in there that I like, but it's funny because in my playlist, in my playlist, I think my first few examples seem to I don't want to say mid heavy, but they don't do that.
Tom,
I mean, and they're older songs, and so that's why there wasn't a lot of that ripping away of these frequencies to shape it. It was more just like, hey, this is what the tom sounds like. I'm just going to remove some of the
you didn't have 10 band parametric equalizers at your disposal.
Yeah, so it was like you boosted a little bit and maybe cut just one frequency that was really obnoxious, the worst of them all, but you didn't have a lot of ability to just rip apart a track.
Yeah, I'm probably doing 2 small cuts, somewhere in the tubbiness of the low mids.
I like that, the tubbiness.
The 3.
That's a good one for the toms.
2 to 300 range, again, depending on tuning and size of the
I definitely try to get 200 out of there, because that's generally where I'm boosting my snare. And even though, because I find that because I feel like we try to pan our toms a lot of the times in a mix very differently than they are actually set up on the drum kit, because I think we mentioned this, that generally if you've got, let's say you've got, 2
I pan
rack
them
and a
wider,
floor, they're right next to each other, whereas in the mix, you don't want to hear them right next to each other, and especially because if they're close together, they're also then right there where the snare is, and so if you've got a lot of clashing frequencies, that all starts to build up in the center more. Your
kick, your bass, your snare, and your vocals are usually what's going up center.
Yeah,
that's a general mixing rule of thumb. I mean, it's not required that they're there, but most mixes are. Yeah. That's what's.
And so you'll find that I think your stereo image will start to get pushed to the center more because of your toms, if they have too much in common with your snare. Because it's the same thing with guitars, that if your left and right guitars, even though they're stereo, you'll start to get a mono buildup when when matching frequencies start to line up.
Yeah,
the
it's
same
like a
thing.
weird. It's not masking, but it's like.
Yeah, it happens. It's so bizarre, because even though they're different takes, they will. Some frequencies will become mono at times.
Yeah.
It's like it's not like the entire time, but it happens. And the same thing will happen, I think, with your toms when they start to hit.
Yeah.
Is that you're like, why am I not getting the panning I want? It's because they're being played within the drum kit, and that masking thing happens. Very scientific what I just
generally pan my toms to about the width of my overheads.
Yeah.
Sometimes a little past. I don't pan my overheads super wide. I know we'll go more in detail with this next
That
week.
is a big difference between us. And I noticed it on that recording, the dying recording that I sent you to check, is that I know that you mic'd the drums on that. I was the console guy at the time for that. Your overheads are, again, this is comparatively. Who knows what narrow? I really like wide overheads. You do like to mix. You like to record and mix your overheads a little more narrow than I do. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, we'll dive more. But basically, is that I like the top end of my guitar and the top end of my cymbals around the same frequency range. So I feel that if I just tuck my drums in a little bit, I can mix the cymbals. You know, because you're going to do like a courtesy cut in your vocals around where you boost your guitars. So that if that boost is in the same area as the overheads, I can mix the overheads just beneath the vocal.
I got you.
But they'll be far enough away from the guitars. The guitars will be, you know, not front and center, but they will be wide left and right and very apparent. And then the cymbals just kind of fill in.
No, that makes total sense.
But not starting the cymbal talk, but you know, you have to usually pan your toms in accordance with where you have your overheads and room mics panned.
Yeah.
Unless you're doing like a weird panning effect thing, which could be cool, but you know, before you get into automation, just your stock kind of like I'm throwing the faders up and I'm doing some rough pans so I can start this mix.
Yeah. I mean, get everything out of the center and start to get some space in my mix.
Yeah. It's just a difference in approach. No side.
Yeah, exactly.
I've watched videos of like mix engineers where they're just like, I pan my overheads wide left and wide right, like as far out as they can go. And then I try it and I'm just like, I just don't like how this feels. Like,
and it's so funny because I try the opposite. I try to bring my overheads in closer. And maybe it's just the way that I like to, I track them to begin with.
Yeah.
But I start to bring them in closer. I'm just like, I just feel like it. I just don't like it. I don't like it.
You know, different flavors, man.
Different strokes.
Different folks. So, yeah, I mean, you know, the only, like, tried and true processing that's on all of my toms is that they're getting routed to a stereo bus, which is then also getting routed to a master drum bus.
Yeah, I do the same thing. Actually, if the toms are hit, I mean, like, if I've got a mix where the toms are rarely ever hit, I won't really even bother.
That's fair.
You know, because, I mean, there's sometimes, like, where, I mean, like, they might hit the toms one time in the fucking song.
Yeah,
and it's like, I'm not going to bother with routing a bunch of stuff. I'll just get it to sound decent when it comes in, and that's it. But
I mean, you know, I've gotten drum tracks to mix where, like, I don't want to call it a lazy approach, but, like, if it's not getting recorded, I won't even have it near the drums because drums are acoustic and they resonate. So if I'm just playing, you know, if you say, Adam, I need you to just play kick, snare, hat for this, like, I'm going to take all my cymbals down and I'm going to move my toms across the room, or I'm going to put them in those cabinets behind you and throw some packing blankets over them so they don't ring and get picked up by the room mics, and I'm only going to play what I need. So like, there's some times where, like, I've gotten tracks to mix and I'm like, man, like, my drum mix just sounds muddy, and then I realize I'm like, oh, they're not even hitting the floor tom,
but it's still kind of ringing at times.
Gone.
Yeah. No, completely. Yeah, remove anything that you're not.
Yeah, as far as toms, like, anything. If metal guys, like, are probably more guilty. Like, if you're not gonna hit it, or you're only gonna hit it once, just don't bring it.
Yeah.
Like,
we'll take it off the kit, you know?
Yeah.
No, I completely
agree
with that.
I would if we're running home recording style 8 inputs, and you have 3 rack toms and a floor tom, like, I'm going to ask you, how necessary is that 8-inch tom? Because I would much rather have a snare bottom mic than an 8-inch tom.
And it's like, if they're literally only going to hit it like 1 or 2 times, then just have them hit it, overdub it, or hit it on the second rack, and I'll just make a note, and I'll create a sample off of that, and I'll pan it a little differently.
Yeah,
you know?
like,
there's so many more things. If you're running low on inputs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think the same thing with cymbals. I know a lot of guys will, like, have a lot of cymbals, and they might only be hitting 3 of them in that particular song. Create some more space. Create some more room in the overhead track by taking away those cymbals and spreading those things out, man. Get some more depth going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. You ready to get to the playlist?
Yeah.
All right. It's the playlist for the week. And where can people find these playlists, Adam?
You, the listener, can find these playlists on, I wanted to call it iTunes. It's Apple Music.
They'll know what they mean when we say iTunes.
The Gen Z iTunes, otherwise known as Apple Music, or they will be on Spotify. Those are, Yeah, those are the two places you can find the
playlist.
playlist.
You will find the links to those playlists
in the description of this episode that you're listening to with your own ears. How crazy is that?
If you are on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or you're watching us on YouTube.
I think we just got approved for Google Play. I'll have to double confirm that.
It'll be in the description. You'll go into the description and you'll see.
Click the link to the service you prefer.
Exactly. Then you can join us on there.
Yes, the whole point, if you are a first-time listener and you're just like, I want to listen to the TOMS episode, kick, snare, got that dialed, but TOMS, I don't know enough about it. Whole point of this podcast, you heard the tangent earlier in the episode, is connecting with ourselves and our hopeful future guests through a 5-ish song playlist. When I was interning in a studio, the game that we would play kind of on lunch breaks was just what were the 5 songs that you'd listen to in your car on the way over.
I didn't. I cried in my car.
I cried, yeah. Silence.
When you said connecting with ourselves, I imagined Gwyneth Paltrow, and I really want to get her on the podcast.
We are going to sell candles with our scents.
Yes.
Mine will be called...
Patreon subscribers can get our socks, our used socks from the show.
Used gig socks. Sometimes I work 16-hour live days, so...
Dude, I would love to have Gwyneth Paltrow on the podcast. That'd be great. Like, what music are you listening to, Gwyneth? Can I call you Gwen? Can I call you the Paltrow?
Why in Avengers Endgame, when you all were back-to-back firing, why did you shoot at nothing? That's what I want to know. Why did you stormtrooper
what the hell? Yeah, what's going on?
Or is this just spray and pray, just kind of firing from the hip?
Aiming at nothing. And they also didn't address the fact that she got all those like superpowers, right? From Iron Man 3.
Yeah, she got injected with the heat.
Yeah.
Well, at the end, did they remove it?
Maybe they did. I didn't really like Iron Man 3. It kind of was a blur for me.
I liked it better than 2.
I did, yeah. I felt like Iron Man 2 was very just anticlimactic. I just felt like the whole thing was kind of like,
You know what? I will say this. This is a very controversial
Well, I did like the scene, though, when him and Rhodey?
Yeah.
Rhodey are like back to back. Boom, 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 boom. That
actually hitting stuff? Yeah.
That was cool with all the other robots. That was fun.
It could have been better. The only time I enjoy AC/DC is when Tony Stark is playing it through some sort of jet. Other than that, I have no desire to listen to
really.
him.
Or when Jack Black is doing a rendition of AC/DC. That's kind of funny.
I'm a big Jack Black fan over here.
I'm a big Black Jack fan.
Black, yeah, you know.
All right.
Playlist.
I think I went first last time. So what's number one?
Number one, if you've listened to the last episodes and have listened to the playlist, you will know that my favorite drum sounds of all time are off of A Perfect Circle's The 13th Step from 2003. Call it 2003. So I'm going to pick a different song from that album, and that song is Weak and Powerless. In my notes, the song is W-E-A-K, as in like you have no strength, and my notes turned it to W-E-E-K.
Oh, nice.
So,
Weak and powerless. Days and powerless.
You know, it's not, there are toms in the groove, kind of on some quarter notes, or maybe the offbeats of quarter notes. I'm not listening to it, so I can't say. But they are felt, and you can hear them being hit, but they're not, like, they kind of just push the song along. Kind of that, you know.
Yeah.
It's good. Just a good, not over-the-top tom sound. I dig it.
I dig it. My number one, I gave you the spoiler preview earlier, but Rush. Now, honestly, any of the pre-80s stuff, because the 80s stuff, then they started getting a lot of the synthesizer stuff. They got into that 80s sound, which I love, but for Toms, any of the 1960s and 70s Rush stuff. But I picked Xanadu off of, I think it's Hemispheres.
I don't know. I'm uneducated.
I think it's Hemispheres. But any of that, like I said, any of that 70s Neil Peart work where he's just got every single one of those toms is a clearly defined different pitch.
Yep.
There is a nice, like I mentioned earlier, there's like a mid-presence to the toms of that era that I do really enjoy. I don't know if it necessarily works today, but in the context of those less dense mixes where nothing was hyper real.
Yeah, I would guess, not to cut you off, but they probably had 3 bands of EQ for that channel. So,
but I like it, and I really like how I almost feel like you can hear the drum head, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I feel like you can really kind of get it sounds like a drum.
Yeah.
It does. I feel like a lot of toms nowadays don't really sound like
They
how
sound
toms
like
sound.
blips.
Yeah.
Like EQ blips.
Yeah, yeah. Whereas this, it's like, oh man, that's a drum. That is a piece of I don't know. I was gonna say felt. That is like a drum head. That's a skin. That's some type of material that's stretched over
Film.
top of a drum. I don't know. I just feel like those toms on that record,
Yeah.
on any of that Rush stuff, really just that's what a tom should sound like.
Yeah.
You know, if it worked in modern day music, I would love it, but I don't think it does. But in those old records, it's killer. I love it. It's a
You know,
great
if you got
sound.
the vintage vibe, it'll work. You know?
Yeah, if you're going for the vintage vibe, it's a great sound.
Sweet. You know what? We're gonna stick with a lot of toms. And I'm gonna go with the
Tom Petty?
toms being hit by Danny Carey, which is always a good thing to hear and see. It's a reoccurring theme in my life. I like the way the man hits the drums.
You do.
Fear Inoculum off of Fear Inoculum by Tool.
Self-titled off the album Self-Titled, but a band.
If
Self-titled.
I'm remembering correctly, I'm pretty sure those toms are inverted in the tuning, where the batter head is tuned higher than the resonant head. So if you want to brush up on that, how it sounds, I believe that song is tuned that way. They're one of the ones on the new album is, and I don't remember off the top of my head.
I really wanted to pick a Led Zeppelin song, but Led Zeppelin's not one of my favorite bands. I like them, but I feel like we should have, for one drum episode, had them on here. But
you know, there's still more fun to be had as far as, you know, believe it or not, there's a lot of stuff that goes into recording drums. So I believe Led Zeppelin,
pull them out, because I just feel like John Bonham is like, you know,
the foundational rock drummer.
Yeah, so I feel like you have to mention him.
If my memory serves me correct, and by memory I mean podcast schedule, episode 7 more than likely on my playlist will feature some John Bonham action.
Yeah, I'll try to bring that in too. For me, number 2, a little not a lot of people know the man. They might not realize how influential he was, but St. Alfonso's Pancake Breakfast by Frank Zappa off the album Apostrophe.
Nice.
There are a lot of great tones on that entire record. That's a fun record. That beat of the drums is very tom focused.
Okay.
It's only 2 toms, and I really like it because the rack tom is actually panned. Everything's panned audience perspective. So, or maybe it was a left-handed drummer. I don't know. Actually, I got to look into that. But I really think it's a great balance because he's hitting the toms so often and making a beat out of them.
Yeah.
There's not too much ring, but you still get this nice body and this nice resonance of the drums.
Yeah.
That I guarantee you those toms were tuned to the key of the song.
Probably.
Because there's this musicality to the toms in that recording that I think blends so nicely with the chimes and the guitar that's going on.
There was a guy who worked, I'm not the most familiar with Zappa's catalog, but on Andrew Shep's podcast, he talked with an engineer that worked with Zappa. I don't remember who it was. It was just one of those where, like, I have like 2.5 hours of chores worth to do, and this Andrew Shep's episode is like 2.5. So I'm going to pop my headphones in and plow through my day. And he was talking about working with Zappa, and he was very detail oriented. So more than likely, they probably got them as close to in tune.
Because I mean, it's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
What happens when you pay attention to those toms? Like, whoa, they really, if those toms are tuned any different, it wouldn't create that same, like, I don't mean harmony as in like pitch harmony.
Mm-hmm.
I mean harmony as in all things coming together and being
like, yes,
yeah, like, hey, we're in harmony together. Like that's what happens there.
Yeah,
it's really
it
cool.
glues the song together. Yeah.
It's really awesome.
Number 3 for me, Spoon Man by Soundgarden.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that further emphasizes what I said about Weak and Powerless and how I like my toms. Is like, if you listen to that, they are the driving force of the song, but they're not that in your face. Like, they are, you can hear them being hit and you can feel how low they are. And if you listen in good headphones, like, you can hear the ring, and it is right on the edge of being too much.
They do something, I that's not in my list, but the bottom on them, they just have that bottom, as, we all talk about a nice bottom, and that those toms have a nice bottom, and it's just like, whew, it just, you like, to reference another one of the songs, My Wave, you hop on it, it just takes you on this wave, and those toms just carry you. It's nice.
It's, Matt Cameron is so good.
Love him. Number 3 for me, and this is, well, Well, this particular song, Cut Through the Static by State Champs. That is a modern pop punk record. I've got another actual pop punk song on here, too, because I really like pop punk toms because I think they are a really good middle ground between getting good tone but also being punchy and being able to cut through a mix.
There's a lot of cool rhythmic accents in pop punk that are on the toms where the average person would probably do like a snare flam or a
I
crash
think
or
pop
something.
punk drummers are really, really cool with that. But I really want to bring up that... crap. I had his name on I was going to bring up his name, and all of a sudden I just brain farted about who did that record. John Feldman.
Feldy.
Feldy, dude, his drum tones that he gets they're incredible. Like, honestly, like, I feel like I don't have the other notes from the other ones. I feel like I mentioned some of his other songs, but honestly, he is one of the kings of drum tones, in my opinion.
Especially for modern... radio-y
radio-y
stuff.
music, radio-y rock stuff, because I feel like he does such a great job. Just like I said with
not the most natural sound, but they are good.
Yeah, but I feel like they might not. I think sometimes though, like, I feel like with the State Champ stuff, I feel like it's as close to natural as you can get
in that genre.
Okay. and I like it.
I'm
I think
unfamiliar,
it's cool.
so I shouldn't comment.
Yeah, no, I think you can get your toms relatively close to that in real life.
Okay.
And I think it's a really cool balance.
Cool. Number 4 for me, Hysteria by Muse. Again,
Nice.
Same tom vibe. You get the toms I like at this point. It builds nice. They serve the song well. They're not in your face. I mean, they're pretty in your face at the beginning because they're the driving factor of the song, but they're not ripping your head off. They don't sound like cannon fire or like EQ blips. It's a good, natural, aggressive tom sound.
I went through
and there's just this kiss of like stadium or like hall reverb on them. Like it's like almost Metallica-esque, but not.
Ooh.
And it's just this kiss of attack from the reverb on them that's very nice.
See, Muse got brought up to me like a couple months ago, and I meant to go through a Muse listen through again because I remember in early high school I got into them.
They were my
for a
first
little
concert.
bit. They were like, I think, I can't remember the names of the records, but I remember getting really into them, and they were kind of one of those gateway bands that they didn't become one of my favorite bands, but they got me into other bands that then became favorites. So I've been meaning for a time, and now you've brought this up to go back and check this out.
A weird tie back to the last episode. So Muse was my first concert. They were the headliners of the first professional concert that I went to. The band Silver Sun Pickups opened.
Yeah.
I really like them. I didn't like them enough at the time. They were a little too proggy and mellow for my like cool Bullet for My Valentine t-shirt wearing 8th grade ass.
Ooh.
But
those are the days.
Man, like the drummer for Silver Sun Pickups really hit hard. Like he was and there was this sound from the snare drum that I heard, and more than likely it was just a clip snare going into a plate reverb. Which is what I love. So, yeah, I didn't mention that last episode. I just remembered that now. And it was just such a, like, I didn't know anything about audio then. We were we were in the arena in Baltimore, and we were, like, facing the stage, like, not adjacent, but, like, in parallel with it, like, the far back.
Yeah.
But we were the front row of the balcony, so I could look down, and I just saw all these lights, which I now know were, like, the sound console and the light board.
You're like, what is the light show down there?
Yeah, so, yeah.
Hell yeah.
Clip your snares into your
Clip
verbs,
your
people.
snares. Number 4 for me, again, another pop punk song, February Weather by In Her Own Words. That has got a very tom-heavy beat in the intro. And I think I really like the way the toms are tuned there because between the rack and the floor, there's this nice bouncy play. It's part to do with the panning, but I think, like we talked about before, panning doesn't get your toms where they need to be because you've got to remove or accent frequencies. And however this engineer did it with the tuning of the drums, it really creates this nice bouncy feel that you get this really nice panning effect.
Nice.
That's really, really cool. That's not only, dimensional, it's also harmonically panned in a way, I guess, just because the notes, I don't know, the note choices, the difference between the notes, the interval between those two notes creates this really nice harmony.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's really cool.
You're describing them like they are appropriately tuned toms.
Yeah, it's a really, really cool effect. And then they're just really, they're not too aggressive. They're punchy because it's a pop punk song, but they've got this just, I don't know, I think it was the way the guy hit him. He hit him very consistently. You can tell even when you've compressed toms, you can tell when they're inconsistent hits.
Yeah.
And the hits on these are just really nice and smooth sounding. They don't feel too pokey. They're just, it's very smooth. I like it. It's nice.
5 for me is I'm between 2 songs from the same artist off of 2 different albums. We'll go with Black Tongue by Mastodon off of the Hunter. I think the red one with the goat looking thing. So I believe on that record there's no resonant heads. It's all just batter heads.
Oh, okay.
Bron's got some awesome tom sounds. It's very unconventional. We could have talked about that earlier. Just take the resonant head off and experiment with it a little bit.
Take the batter head off. Don't even hit the top.
Yeah, don't even just open GarageBand and tap away. It's just it's a vintage approach to drums because back in the day, you know, your Bonhams and some of the other people weren't playing. Your Phil Collinses of the world were not playing resonant heads on the toms. And a lot of people don't really approach that as a modern production choice. And what I love about Mastodon is they are a metal band, but a lot of their choices are not cliche metal choices.
Yeah.
So
I love their new record, by the way.
unique.
I love the engineering on it. I think
It is good.
A lot of people, a lot of old school Mastodon fans don't like their new stuff, just because it's getting
Not
farther
metal,
away.
yeah.
But I love it. I think I appreciate them as one of these bands that instead of doing the and there's nothing wrong with this, doing the Fall Out Boy, where it's just like Fall Out Boy went from being this fun pop punk band that was very tongue in cheek to just being this kind of
pop rock.
It's really cringy to me. Like, don't get me wrong, like, some of their hooks are catchy, but it's just, I don't know. Whereas Mastodon is a band that's like, yeah, you can be mad that they changed their sound, but it feels like a natural progression that it's like, anybody that's a musician, anybody that really dives deep into their craft of being a musician, I feel like evolves over time,
Oh, absolutely.
And your stuff is going to change. And I think the changes they've made over time have been a natural progression. And I love seeing it.
Yeah, because they're not doing it because it's just like, if we got more weird and atmospheric, we would sell more records. It's just like, like they could make an album that sounds like Leviathan again and all the old school people would love it. But
they'd still bitch about it.
Yeah. I feel the same way about Thrice. Is there's like they're the type of band that's just like, yeah, we're gonna do what we want, and if we lose 20 fans per city because
I feel
they
like
don't like
Thrice
it,
is another band that I really respect. Even if I don't necessarily love everything new that they come out with, I can still go, this feels genuine. This feels like a genuine change. I just don't like the changes that don't feel genuine.
Yeah. But then again, they have nicer houses, their cars are paid for, and they're touring in buses. So
if they're happy with that, if they're doing it for reasons like that, we're like, you know what, I want to make this money. I don't want to do this forever. Like, good on you, man. I'm not going to judge you on it. I just don't like it. But that doesn't mean I don't
going to participate.
Yeah, it doesn't mean I don't still respect you. It's like, dude, you're making more money than I am. So.
Yeah, I will. No one's buying my T-shirts.
Yeah, it's just I just don't listen to that music anymore. But
yeah.
Number 5, I know I've referenced this record before because it's one of my favorite records, but Permian, The Great Dying by the Ocean off of Phanerozoic 1.
So heavy.
So good. So good. That is like peak. Those drums are like, if you've got like a graph, a scale, whatever like that, they are like right before you get to the point of where you start getting into that beyond hyper-realistic drums.
Yeah.
They are right there on the edge of as aggressive and as punchy as you can get drums before they become not drums anymore. They become just something else.
Yeah.
I love it. We talked about the snare, I talked about the kick, but the toms on those are really nice. They still have a warmth to them. They still have a body. They sound, when I say deep, I don't mean deep like up and down deep. I mean like forward to back. It feels like when those toms get hit.
They have dimension
There's
to
this
them.
3D dimension to the toms on that record, and that song in particular, because that song in particular has a really nice dynamic range where the song starts off slow and a little not as busy, not as heavy, and then it builds up to this huge level. It's the last song on the record.
Yeah.
And it's really awesome toms there. For most of the stuff that I work on, I would love to kill. I would kill to have that drum sound and then just kind of tweak it here and there for needs. But that to me is whoo-wee.
Yeah. Toms. This was a hard, I think we talked about this earlier. It was a hard playlist to pick.
Yeah, this was a tough one. This was a really tough one. I feel like I want to give a quick conciliatory prize and shout out to anything done in the 80s.
Yeah.
I love that. That oh my god,
electronic pad firework drum sound.
Oh god, it's great. I love when bands. Honorable mention, Haken's 1985, aptly named because it's got modern drum sounds, but then it goes into this section where it's got the digital drums.
Nice.
It's beautiful. It's awesome. But I love that sound. Like any of those Van Halen records from the 80s when they were doing that, where you listen to Alex's drums and they're just I love it.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm glad it's done with.
We've said it in every episode. Is like we're not picking the best sounding necessarily individual instruments, but we're picking our personal references when we go to put a microphone on a source, and
what we think does a really great job of fitting the context of the song. Because I think that's what makes. I think it's what makes an instrument sound bad is when it just does not feel like it belongs with the rest of them. When it doesn't feel like it belongs with, like, man, that you know. And I and it might sound contradictory to what I said at the last episode about, like, I think it's really cool that Loathe song uses the electronic drum sound.
But the snare is an individual instrument in the drum kit where you kind of want your toms to have some sort of consistency.
Yeah. But yeah, no, this was fun though. This was fun to try to do something that I don't know anybody that's really passionate about toms. Like, oh man, let's talk about toms. So I think this is a fun exercise for us to kind of dive into it.
I've only ever had passionate discussions about toms when someone's arguing against my points,
or when it's Tom Cruise,
and
which Mission Impossible movie?
Or if we're talking mustaches, Tom Selleck, shout out.
Oh man, yeah, what a mustache.
Yeah, that guy.
We should do
an ode to Selleck.
I'm really mad. Okay, I know what we have to do for our future Tom episode. Yep, we need to shave and just have the Tom Selleck mustaches. We get a guy named Tom on and
Hawaiian shirts, really short bathing suit shorts.
And we'll stare at the camera for a good 20 seconds when that episode starts to be like, does anybody remember? We won't say, does anybody remember this, but it'll just be that acknowledgement.
Did he wear, was it a Detroit hat? Detroit Tigers hat?
I can't remember. You're talking about Magnum?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll do it. We'll do that when we come back to Tom's one day. We're gonna make a note. But this was cool though. Catch us. So next episode though, next episode we're talking about overheads and room mics.
No, next episode. No, room mics is the episode after overheads.
Oh, so just overheads.
Next episode is going to be a lot of cymbal talk.
Cool.
And then overheads, and then
we're breaking those up. All right.
Yeah. I just feel like cymbals is it's as deep as snares.
Okay, cool.
Maybe not as subjective, but you can't change really what your cymbals sound like other than a couple little like...
Yeah, that's true.
You could put some gaff tape on the bottom if it's too washy, but... this is just my opinion of what if you have a better understanding of what cymbals are, you can make smarter overhead choices. And then, so next episode will be cymbals and overheads, and then the episode after that, we have it scheduled out for a preview, will be room mics and spot mics.
Cool.
And then to round out the drums after rooms and spots, we will be covering minimalistic and creative drum recording.
Awesome. That'll be fun.
And then we will be moving on to debase spawn.
Debase, that's my area. That's me. I do that. I play that thing.
He plays that.
I do. I slap a debase man.
The good things about those episodes is I'm not going to have that big of an opinion because I don't know that much about
I got a lot of opinions about bass. You get ready for it. Get ready for it. It's going to be a hellfire. We're going to burn this table.
Oh, please don't. We're going to have to podcast. We're a minimalist podcast. We podcast on the floor.
But, again, you guys can check us out. Apple Podcasts, Apple Music is where the playlists are going to be.
Spotify for your pods and your playlists. I think we got approved by Spotify to upload videos to Spotify. So you don't even need to click the YouTube, but you should subscribe to Reflections Artist Collective. We have a Patreon. We're on the Instagram. It's all under Reflections Artist Collective. Friend us on Facebook.
They are what they are. We got to give big shots to Reflections Artist Collective. They've been a real big support here, a real big support of the Backseat playlist.
Boom.
There's some really cool guys, good guys working behind that team.
Yep, good. We shouted out ourselves. Reflections Artist Collective is the umbrella corporation.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's
Even though we're against
it's
corporations.
the network. The Backseat playlist is just the podcast series. There's going to be audio
Loads of
nerd content and really bad jokes, and, you know, just stick around and boogie.
Yeah, this is only the beginning. So please like, subscribe, comment. Tell us what you like about the show. Tell us what you don't like. Give us some, you know, we are open to criticism. Just don't destroy my soul. Because
Well, I
it's
haven't been
already
saying
broken.
do what you love what you do, travel light, and don't be a dick.
Ooh.
Yeah, if you have criticisms, just don't be a dick about
Yeah,
it. I
just don't
can't
be a
handle
dick,
it.
you know,
Like,
but,
my
you
favorite
know,
band broke up.
let us
Like,
know.
cut me
Do
some
we-
slack.
What would you like to hear more of? What would you like to hear less of? You know, do you want us to interject a little more life? Not life as in energy, but like bring in a little more life talk into the podcast.
Yeah.
What do you want to hear? Let us know.
Rate us. Comment. We need to control
Rate,
the
not
algorithm.
Raid. Don't raid our studio. We know.
Don't raid my microphone. I mean, you know, you could take a 57 or
Now,
two.
if you want to hop in a lobby and we'll raid on, I don't know, raid Shadow Legends. Oh man, if we get sponsored by
Oh,
them,
that would
that'd
be
be
cool.
great. I mean, I hate that game.
If you have an ant problem, buy some raid.
yeah, buy some raid.
Raid those
Sponsor
ants.
us. Thank you guys. We appreciate everyone that's been tuning in with us and sharing all the content. It's been a lot of fun.
5 stars only.
5
Or 4,
stars.
you know.
Or 6. If you can find a
4.
way to do 6, that'd be pretty
Yeah,
cool.
2 episodes at 3 stars apiece.
Oh man. All right. So please check out the podcast. Check out the playlist. Subscribe. Like.
Follow.
Follow.
Uh,
Follow us on social medias.
yeah. Follow Phoenix's band, Marzi
Yeah,
Maddox.
Marzi Maddox.
Follow, you know, you're on Instagram.
Follow your neighbor around. See what they do. Let us know. What is your neighbor doing on the weeknights?
Yeah.
What are they listening to?
Should listen to this podcast. You know, if you know a struggling audio engineer in your life, make them listen to our podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Share it with them. Share us with your grandma. She might find us funny and
Yeah.
charming.
You know,
But who knows? But I'm Phoenix.
I am Adam.
This has been the This has been the Backseat playlist podcast brought to you by Reflections Artist Collective.
Interior of your car could be black. Black leather on a hot summer day.
Woo, that's painful.
That's your definition of luxury. Upper middle class government worker.
Patreon subscribers, be sure to check out the behind the scenes footage we'll upload for these couple episodes.
Yeah, did I mention that if you're a Patreon subscriber, you get behind the scenes content, early access, and we hit record on the camera as soon as we walk in the room, so you get to see all of the pre-show talk.
Ooh, yeah. It's 18 plus.
Maybe even a bathroom break or two. Who knows?
All right, guys. We'll catch you at the
magic
next
of
episode.
post. Stay safe out there.